Welcome in, my beautiful friend. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know I am not shy about talking about very touchy subjects. But today's episode, I do believe, calls for a trigger warning. That's right, a traditional trigger warning. This is the first time I have ever included one of these to my podcast. But this episode contains information about childhood physical and sexual abuse, and it's designed for adult listeners, so headphones are recommended, or be at earshot with your children. If childhood abuse or sexual abuse are very touchy subjects to you, this may not be an episode you want to listen to while driving. Thanks again for being here, friend. I love you so, so much. For as long as I can remember, they've been telling us to enjoy it while they're young, but our days are filled with chaos and stress and cooking and endless laundry piles. Where's the time to enjoy it? Yeah, that's what I always thought too. There's so much I have to do. When do I find time for peace and joy and happiness when I barely have time to sleep? Mama, it's time to make shift happen. You can be a happy mom. If I can, you can. Trust me. I've been a mess, I've been depressed, I've been overwhelmed, I've been to the bottom of the pits, and I've risen, I've grown, I've bloomed, and it all started when I realized I didn't have to anything. I get to. It is my privilege and my honor and my divine responsibility to be the queen of my home. It's not a burden. I'm not a burden. I'm in charge. I'm the ruler. I'm the chaos coordinator. I'm the calm in the storm. And so are you. Come with me. Let's rise, mamas. Adjust your crown. Accept your responsibility. Change the effing world together. It's all in the way we choose to see it. I'm so glad you're here, friend. You're listening to Meant to Bloom with Brittany Clarkson. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Meant to Bloom. Today, I have Missy here to talk to us about something very, very important. I feel like we like to pretend that some things aren't a problem until they are a problem. And this is one of those cases where we just can't leave it up to chance. We need to be having the conversations about the really hard stuff. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. All right. We have to stop turning a blind eye to the existence of things like child abuse. And we have to talk about these ugly pieces if we want to take the steps we need to take in order to prevent these kinds of tragedies and atrocities from continuing on in our children's lives. So, Missy is here today to talk to us specifically about the body safety box. And I am really interested to know, what is the body safety box?
Brittany, thank you so much for having me today. The Body Safety Box is a child abuse prevention educational kit I designed to help protect elementary school age children from childhood physical and sexual abuse. There is one box made for kids ages 5 to 8, and a second box is made for kids ages 9 to 12 for our tween crowd. And child abuse, Brittany, especially childhood sexual abuse, it's such a sensitive topic, it's such a disturbing topic that as parents, we aren't sure how to best approach it with our kids. So we often don't have the conversations that we want to have because we just don't want to get it wrong. Doesn't that sound like so many of us as moms?
It really does.
And we really want to have these conversations, yet we just don't have the words. So, an informed child, Brittany, is a better protected child. The body safety box gives parents all they need to make tough conversations easy. The body safety box contains all the language parents need to teach their kids refusal skills and reporting skills in ways that are really kid friendly, age appropriate, and developmentally appropriate. The lessons inside the body safety box are actually scripted, so there's no guesswork needed for moms. It is all there for you.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
I, yeah, this feels like a very, very useful tool to have when you just know you need to say something and you don't know the right words.
Right, right.
It is difficult to have the conversations and to know what's appropriate to really say to my kid about this right now, without giving them too much of a fear.
Of course, of course. And at those specific ages, everything is tried and tested. It's research based, it's evidence based. It's just good to go for all the moms.
I love that. So we like to really, I feel like as moms, a lot of times we like to push the whole topic under the rug and save it for later and be like, we know it happens, but it's not going to happen to our kid. And
Mhm.
so I want to ask you, like, how common is child abuse really? And
Brittany,
what, yeah.
we need to be aware that child abuse is everywhere. It's everywhere across all demographic boundaries. And I think there's this false sense of security for a lot of us that we can kind of gated community our way out of it. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. And the statistics are truly staggering. So let's keep in mind that abuse is really underreported. So it's hard to get truly accurate numbers, but the most recent numbers I've seen are 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys will experience contact sexual abuse before turning 18. And that's being touched. That's not just seeing an image that we don't want our kids to see. And that's even way more prevalent. And the
Mhm.
median age of childhood sexual abuse is only 9 years old. And what that median word means in statistical language, of kids who experience abuse, 50% of the time it occurs to kids under age 9, and 50% of the time it happens to children over age 9, so between 9 and 18. So that's just shocking. 50% of the time abuse is happening to kids under age 9.
Right. That's,
Just
I mean,
so
it's basically all
disturbing.
kids.
It's
Yeah.
just so disturbing. So picture your child's classroom, whether your child is older or younger than 9 for your mom listeners. So at age 9, that fourth grade classroom, picture 30 kids. So what those numbers tell us is that 2 of the boys out of 30 boys and 7 of the girls out of 30 girls will experience abuse before turning 18. And for half of those kids, they already have. So just staggering numbers. And it's so disturbing that none of us wants to think about it, though we have to think about it, like what you're saying, Brittany, in order to better protect our kids. And our kids deserve our very best efforts at prevention. This is not something to sweep under the rug. It's something to be active and intentional about in protecting our children and giving them the skills they need. Another statistic that is really surprising to most moms is over 91% of children know their abuser. So, Brittany, I'm in middle age. I know I'm several years older than you. And the only thing I ever heard as a kid, and it wasn't even instruction, it was just stranger danger. Like, what did you
Hmm.
hear as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah. It was don't talk to strangers.
Yep, it's strangers. So, most of the time, though, it's really known person danger when we're talking sexual abuse for kids. And we want to think as moms, who has access to our kids? Who has access? And this is scary. Who sets up some kind of pattern of interaction where you, as a parent, falsely trust this person? People who may be distant relatives, people who position themselves as family friends, people who have access to our kids, people perhaps at friends' homes, and greatly minimizing or eliminating that one adult to one child interaction has been shown as a protection factor in the literature. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, a top perpetrator statistically is a male who's in relationship with a single mom. So think access to a kid. I mean, there are perpetrators who are actively seeking out that type of access. Also, older kid to younger kid abuse is common. So when you think of a little bit of that power difference we have between an older kid and a younger kid,
Hmm.
and this is a tough one to hear. Also, children with special needs can be at an increased risk of abuse. So we think
Hmm.
especially about our kids who have challenges with communication. They're at an even greater risk because it's more difficult for them to tell and to report.
Yeah.
Another tough statistic is less than 10% of kids tell. So once that abuse has happened, typically less than 10% of kids tell. And oftentimes, when a kid does tell, the adult that they do tell doesn't help. And just the shame of abuse, just the shame that's a part of abuse, the shame that's not the child's shame to carry, is really, really a factor in that. There can also be a real delay in reporting, even years later, even into adulthood, when a person would first report, and especially for our guys. We read
Hmm.
about adult men, they haven't even told their wives. Nobody knows. And imagine carrying that burden and carrying that shame that's not yours to carry for just decades.
Yeah. Wow. Those are some shocking statistics.
They really are. They really are. And they're just deeply upsetting. And we need to just proactively do all we can in prevention, not only for our own children, but for our kids' peers as well.
Yeah. All right. So before you tell us how to really take the action. What are the consequences of abuse?
Brittany, have you heard of the ACE study, ACE study?
I have not.
It's getting a little bit more mainstream, and I'm grateful for that. So, the ACE study, ACE, stands for the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. And it's this massive landmark study with over 17,000 adult participants. So, in the world of research, that's just a huge, huge study. So, what these researchers looked at, there were 10 adverse childhood experiences that adult participants asked if they had experienced as kids. Childhood experiences, to name a few, include divorce of your parents, experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, and also, interestingly, witnessing violence in the home or community. That can impact a child as much as experiencing it themselves, which is super important to be aware of too. So if you think of a kid whose mom is in a domestic violence situation, that kid is registering that trauma as if they were being the ones physically abused themselves. So that's important to be aware of. And just, the school shootings, the precious
Mhm.
kids we've lost, and the hundreds of thousands of kids who have survived these shootings in their own school. And those numbers pre-pandemic in 2018 and 2019 alone is over 100,000 kids. And we just have to do better. We just
Mhm.
have to do better. It's just not acceptable. Another adverse childhood experience is having a family member attempt or die by suicide, having an incarcerated parent, substance abuse problems. So many people grow up in an alcoholic home, just so common.
Mhm. Oh
And
yeah.
also people having mental health challenges in the home. So those are just a few of the 10 that this study looked at. And the study looked at primarily college educated, white, middle class Americans, people we don't typically think of with having the added challenges of poverty or of being economically disadvantaged. So these
Mhm.
were like privileged-ish people that this study was looking at. And the numbers are still super huge. So 61% of the adults surveyed across 25 states had experienced at least one ACE. So that's the majority of people in that privileged-ish demographic that had experienced at least one ACE. And nearly 1 in 6 had experienced 4 or more ACEs. And that's a
Mhm.
ton. So let's think through, let's name 4. Let's think about this as a child, experiencing childhood sexual abuse, witnessing violence in the home, having an incarcerated parent, and substance abuse problems in the home. And imagine a child, a fourth grade kid sitting in school trying to learn when that's what's going on for them, which is
Mhm.
just so upsetting to think of. And here in Phoenix, my home city of Phoenix, I had participated for many years in a trauma sensitive schools work group with other professionals across many disciplines. And we were working on how do we support our kids who have experienced trauma? How can we make schools really more supportive for the kids in our care? And we talked about how kids here in our state, children with 5 or more ACEs, could fill our professional football stadium.
Mhm.
So just staggering numbers. We had just had the Super Bowl here in Arizona a few months ago. So picture that stadium. If you were watching the Super Bowl, picture that stadium filled with kids, just Arizona kids instead of football fans with 5 or more ACEs.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. That's what's out there. So what the ACE study shows is ACEs are associated with a wide range of health consequences later in life. So experiencing these, difficult childhood experiences has consequences for adults later in life, including obesity, heart disease, lung disease, depression, and substance use. ACEs can also negatively impact educational attainment, job opportunities, and earning potential across a person's lifespan. And for me as a teacher by profession, just the implications for teaching and learning for our kids are huge. And when we think about just the protection and love and care that children experiencing these adverse events are so deeply deserving of, and how often these are the kids that are, quote, discipline problems. Instead of looking at this child as what happened to this child, what are the roots behind the behavior, these are often the kids who are, quote, labeled the discipline problems, and just
Mhm.
how tragic that is for them when the root cause of those behaviors could possibly be something as insidious as abuse. And just the lack of training, even in education, even among teachers, the lack of training is just really pervasive. So we want to be really looking at root causes, at the roots, and at the why behind the behavior.
Mhm.
And that's important as educators. That's super important as moms. What's the why behind my child's behavior? You know,
Yeah.
hopefully we pray it's not something related to abuse, but what are the root causes in any situation with our kids that we're facing? You know, rather than just looking at the behavior, let's look at the why. And a really high quality question, Brittany, is what happened to you? Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry, he's Dr. Bruce Perry, MD and PhD. He's both kinds of doctor, and he's a foremost researcher, one of the top on the planet in child maltreatment. And together they co-authored a book called What Happened to You? And that's just a great resource for anyone who is really interested in the issue and in prevention, or if something unfortunately has happened in childhood, for anyone who's listening, that's a helpful resource. And I think it's important to mention, you know, as we're thinking about these numbers and looking at these numbers and how common adverse childhood experiences are, that some of the beautiful moms listening today, some of the beautiful women listening today have experienced abuse and perhaps yet haven't fully processed it or gotten the healing that they're so deeply deserving of, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And just human development wise, it's super common for these events to really come to our full awareness in our late 20s and our early 30s. You know, so if that's you today, beautiful mom, please hear me say that there is so much hope and healing for you. It's so beyond not your fault. I'm so sorry. We're so sorry. It never should have happened. And there's healing for you, and there's prevention for your kids. And we can protect our kids today.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So why did you create the body safety box, and what is inside the box?
Sure. So childhood physical and sexual abuse are not a part of my story, though so many women I hear from have experienced childhood sexual abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just everywhere. My background is in elementary education. I taught first and second graders for many years, and I always wanted the kids in my care, when they came into the classroom, to feel really seen, known, welcomed, and valued. And I focused my doctoral studies on meeting kids' social and emotional needs during the school day. That always really mattered to me. So here I was as this young teacher many years ago, trying to create these really warm and welcoming, loving, nurturing classroom environments. And I learned about the abuse stats. And I thought, okay, this is great that I'm creating these beautiful classroom climates, but I'm missing the boat. If so many kids are experiencing abuse, I need to first start there with child abuse prevention as really a baseline level of meeting kids' social and emotional needs. So I looked around, I was looking around for abuse prevention programs nationally. No matter, you know, these stats are so huge, but there was next to nothing available for our kids. And what was there was so outdated, like Brady Bunch status, like super
Right.
old, super outdated, not engaging. I could see as a teacher from an education standpoint, I mean, best practices in teaching were nowhere to be found. So I created the lessons on my own. I piloted them in 3 different school districts, and they exceeded my super high expectations already, just so wildly, that I realized this needs to be so many more places than the kids that I can reach myself personally. So I packaged the lessons as the body safety box, and I'm so grateful that we've reached kids in tons of states, 4 countries, and I'm just so grateful to be able to get prevention out there to kids just everywhere. So I'd love to share with you about some of the lessons inside the box. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So the concepts for younger and older kids are the same. There's a box for kids ages 5 to 8, and another box for kids ages 9 to 12. So the concepts that we teach are the same, but the activities are specific to either younger or older kids. And the first 2 lessons are social and emotional learning lessons. And these are foundational lessons before directly teaching body safety that help kids to begin to build a solid sense of their worth and identity. You know, that's just such a solid baseline there. So we start with kids making an inside and outside self-portrait where they reflect on all of their great character qualities that they have. And it also reinforces a positive body image for them on the outside. So we're teaching kids how special they are, how worthy they are, and really just affirming a child's dignity, which is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And this is framed artwork that kids hang in their rooms. There's a frame included. I suggest in the directions that kids hang it next to their light switch, so they're really actively seeing these positive messages about themselves repeatedly. And this is helping to create those positive messages in kids' brains neurologically. And I had seen a study where a typical adult tells themselves 300 negative messages a day. And we just want our kids instead to really build a more positive story about themselves. And this can help, just seeing those messages over and over again, hanging in their rooms. And next, in lesson 2, we give our kids a foundational emotional vocabulary lesson. Dr. Brene Brown's research, I've learned so much from her. She teaches us that a typical adult knows only 3 emotional vocabulary words. And these are happy, sad, and angry. Yet we need our kids to know at least 30 emotional vocabulary words, just depending on, of course, their age and where they are individually. And this is really setting them up for so many good things relationally, being able to recognize and label their feelings, just setting them up to start to be able to emotionally regulate and to be able to connect with others. And as emotions are related to abuse, just being able to trust those extremely uncomfortable and confusing feelings surrounding abuse, and being able to keep telling adults until they get help. So those first 2 lessons were kind of setting the stage. We've given our kids a foundation for I am special, my feelings are special, and then we get into my body is special, and we teach kids 2 body safety rules in their next lessons. We teach kids their first body safety rule, no one can hurt my body. So that's physical abuse prevention. We teach it with words, a child-made drawing, and a movement, which is really in line with brain-based learning. Kids make puppets, actual pillowcases, where when they lay their head on their pillow at night, they say to themselves how special their body is and no one can hurt my body. And I just love that. So they're getting that positive messaging over and over again. And with 1 in 3 women experiencing violence in her lifetime, that is just so important. Next, we teach the second body safety rule, which is no one can touch my private parts. And these are defined as the parts of kids' bodies that are covered by their swimsuits. I had seen another program where the term sexual abuse was used with 7-year-olds, and I just didn't feel good about that at all. I wouldn't want my child to hear the words sexual and abuse together when they're that little. So it was just so important for me. Doesn't that just make sense? We want our kids to have a good view of that, of course, at first, and until we introduce concepts. So I really wanted to make the body safety box super age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, and really kid-friendly language. So kids make magnetized artwork for the fridge, or art they can hang in their rooms at home, where they use colored pencils that are really valuing their unique bodies and skin color. And next, we teach kids refusal and telling skills, which is so important. I use the visual of the stop sign, which kids know. They can get away and they can keep telling adults. The stop sign is also a really great visual cue to remind parents when you're in the car with your kids to review what they've learned about keeping their bodies safe, and that they can always tell right away if they've been in an uncomfortable situation. Kids learn with a visual of the stop, get away, and keep telling adults sign, along with a movement. So we're really getting at all the ways that the brain learns. And the last concept in the body safety box is it's not my fault. And it's just critically important to let kids know this. We've mentioned earlier that some studies show that only about 10% of kids tell, and it's the shame, the embarrassment that kids carry from physical or sexual abuse that is not theirs to carry. So it's not my fault is a huge concept, and kids learn it with words, a kid-made drawing, and a movement to really make it memorable. So the body safety box is a very effective primary prevention tool. So we want, of course, ideally to prevent abuse from ever happening. And it's also shown to be super useful as a secondary prevention tool. So if a child has experienced some maltreatment or some abuse, the body safety box is very helpful in preventing it from happening again. We know that once a child has been victimized, they're even at a greater risk. So having it as a primary prevention tool is super helpful as well. So the body safety box has the greatest number of instructional minutes of any program available, which is so important. The lessons are really active and engaging and hands-on, and kids make keepsake quality items that they keep and can refer to over and over again to reinforce learning. And Brittany, I've been just so deeply moved by how many kids the body safety box has helped. I hear stories from social workers in school that teach box lessons, from administrators, of how kids get the instruction in school and then they come in and report. I've heard of siblings who have not had the lessons tell kids who have had body safety box lessons at school about abuse happening to other children at home. The child who has had the lessons reports at school and then asks for box materials to teach to the victimized sibling. So there's kid-to-kid instruction going on outside of the school setting, which is amazing. I mean, you're getting something right. I had also spoken with a school social worker who teaches box lessons in her school, and she says that the girls who have had the lessons will talk amongst themselves, and the stronger friends of the group, kids with just a more naturally bolder, stronger leadership personality, will say, hey, we need to tell the school counselor. So kids will report to other kids who then report to adults. So it's having isn't it though? Just having a really good ripple effect out there. And when I taught the lessons personally in classrooms, I would have kids tell me that, hey, I taught the body safety rules to my cousin, or I played the beach ball game with my brother. And this was a really good story too. I would do pre and post assessments with the younger kids verbally, kids who weren't yet as experienced in writing. And a little first grader, before I had taught her any of the lessons, one of the questions I asked her in the pretest was, if someone hurt your body, who could you tell? And so she rattles off a ton of adults that I teach kids and that you can keep telling. And I'm like, wow, that's great. You know so much about keeping your body safe. Where did you learn that? And she said it was from a book called I Can Tell, and her sister read it to her. And I put it together that her older sister had had the lessons the previous year and taught the body safety rules to this little girl.
Oh.
So even kid-to-kid teaching, the box works. Kids love and remember it. I've got data on over 1,500 kids. Of course, it's reached many more, but I have got data on that number of children, and the box just absolutely works. I wanted to share one story too, that an adult woman gave me permission to share her story anonymously. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. So here she is. We had talked about the challenges that children have perhaps with special needs in telling, kids that are more challenged with communication. So here's a kid, she's a gifted kid in the gifted program, she's verbally gifted. She's in an affluent area here in Phoenix called Scottsdale. Her dad's a professional. She had a 4-year abuse cycle and she hid in a closet. And she told me, as I was sharing body safety box lessons with her, she said, Missy, that one lesson right there would have changed things for me. I would have gone in at the next recess and told. So, this just shows how abuse is truly everywhere. You would never know by looking at that beautiful home and this gifted kid, what she was enduring. And yet she was for 4 years. And we just have to do better. We just have to do better.
Absolutely. So what ideas do you have for moms to continue the conversations with our kids and keeping their bodies safe?
Yes, yes. So it's not just, we don't just want to have this one and done conversation. The body safety box has 7 lessons for our younger kids, 6 lessons for our older kids, and we still want to continue conversations after that, So the activities that kids create from the body safety box, they stay on the fridge, on purpose. They hang in kids' rooms. There are some games that stay on the family's board game shelf. There are books that stay on the family bookshelf. So the visual reminders are intentionally built in for ongoing conversations, which is really helpful. Also, I had mentioned we use the stop sign. So when you're driving in the car, you see the stop sign, you can say, hey, remember when we did the body safety box lessons and we learned how to keep your body safe? Remember what you can do if someone tries to hurt your body or tries to touch your private parts. So just those ongoing conversations and just having those cues in there. There are also some scenarios that are written out in the body safety box, and scenario practice is really helpful in making the learning super practical. There are what if scenarios, like what if an older kid wants you to look at his private parts? What if someone asks for pictures of your private parts? I mean, we know there's a lot of sexting going on with middle schoolers. That's just happening super, super young. And here's another really good what if question. What if the doctor needs to check your private parts when the nurse and I am in the room with you? And moms can use this what if language to really keep the ongoing conversations happening. And we can also get these conversations happening in our schools. Erin Marin is a social worker and a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. She's just a phenomenal woman, and she has single-handedly introduced legislation that's been passed in 38 states, mandating that children are taught body safety education in schools. But here's the thing, that doesn't mean it's happening. So we need to make sure that that's actually happening. And Erin says so eloquently, you know, here she was as this young kid going through all of these horrible things. And she grew up in Illinois, and kids were given fire drills, bus drills, tornado drills. And yes, let's do them. Though look at how likely abuse is. And nothing was happening in child abuse prevention education. You know,
Yeah.
so, and Erin has also graciously written a testimonial for the body safety box. So moms can go to erinslaw.org, see if the law is in your state, and make sure that this instruction, that this prevention education is actually happening in your child's school. And you're welcome to contact me at bodysafetybox.com. Any email or any phone number will get it to me, and we'll get it in there.
I want to thank you, Missy, for sharing all of this really powerful information with us. I think the mamas listening right now are going to get a lot out of this conversation. And I really hope that they have a lot of really positive takeaways and take action to
Right.
protect our children.
Yes.
Where can my listeners get the body safety box, and where can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Boxes are available. They're in stock and ready to ship. They're available for you at bodysafetybox.com. There's also a free fact sheet that's available there for you on the website at bodysafetybox.com. I'm also active on Instagram at bodysafetybox. You're welcome to DM me there. I would love to get in touch with you, and we can reach out to your child's principal and just get this happening. I have moms that have put body safety box events in libraries. Gymnastic groups have gotten together and done it. So there are just so many creative ways that we can protect not only our own children, but our peers' children as well, our kids' peers.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a village.
We
Let's
can
lead
change
it.
this. We can change this. No
Yeah,
child should have to endure this. No child should have
absolutely.
to endure this. And moms, if you have endured it as a child, you are so loved, and we encourage you to get the hope and healing that you are so very deserving of. And it's so beyond not your fault.
Thank you so much, Missy, for being here and sharing this with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Brittany. It's been a pleasure to visit with you. Thank you.